In this educational explainer podcast for professionals and victim survivors, I'm sharing the reality of emotional manipulation tactics, how the narcissist discard can lead to post-separation abuse, how money is used as a tool of control, the 15-year legal battle of Jill Wise, who has made use of her life experience to help others with free resources and paid coaching. This video has been created using free video resources and NotebookLM and Descript.ai. The videos from the Enlightened Target video channel.
Usually, when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there is this comforting expectation of precision,
Right, like something you can actually see.
Exactly. It's kind of like engineering. You fall off a ladder, you break your arm, the x-ray shows that stark, jagged white line, and the doctor just points at the film and says, there it is. That's the problem.
Yeah, broken or not broken. It's binary. It's a clean answer.
We crave that visibility, don't we?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Human beings are deeply comforted by things that can be categorized, measured, and, pointed to on a chart.
Yeah.
It makes the pain make sense.
But then you step into the world of neurodevelopment, personality disorders, and psychological trauma, and suddenly that x-ray machine is, it's utterly useless.
Yeah, it really is.
We're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is honestly completely murky.
Right.
And that is exactly where we are heading today. We are shining a massive spotlight into those murky waters to look at something that is complex, deeply hidden, and highly emotional.
Mm-hmm.
The invisible mechanics of narcissistic abuse.
And that invisibility, it's the weapon itself. When you're in the thick of this specific type of psychological warfare, the abuser relies entirely on the fact that there are no physical bruises.
Wow, right.
There are no jagged white lines on an x-ray to prove to the outside world, or even to yourself, that you're being destroyed. Understanding the underlying machinery we're about to discuss is really the only way to strip the abuser of their power.
So if you are listening to this right now, maybe you're a professional in the mental health or legal field trying to finally understand why your clients are acting the way they are.
Right.
Or maybe you're a victim or survivor trying to piece together your own shattered reality. This deep dive is for you. We're going to unpack the emotional manipulation, the exhausting double life victims are forced to live, the brutal reality of the discard, and a phase that is terrifyingly misunderstood by our legal system, which is post-separation abuse.
It requires looking past the surface-level arguments of a toxic relationship. You really have to stop looking at the symptoms and start looking at the absolute core of the pathology.
To do that, we are pulling from the extensive teachings and lived experience of Jill Wise.
Yeah, her work is incredible.
It really is. She's a survivor, an advocate, and a recovery coach for complex PTSD. But her insights aren't just clinical, right? They were forged in absolute fire.
Mm-hmm. Lived experience.
Exactly. She endured a lifetime of psychological abuse, first from a malignant narcissistic father, and then she spent 15 staggering years in the family court system.
15 years. It's just horrifying.
15 years battling a narcissistic ex-husband who subjected her to severe parental alienation regarding her son. She essentially took a lifetime of being targeted and turned it into a masterclass on how to survive and escape.
She really did.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if we want to understand how a person gets trapped in this nightmare, we have to start at the foundation of the illusion. Like, how does someone get hooked in the first place?
Well, it all comes down to a single haunting question. It's a question that survivors carry with them for years, sometimes decades, after the relationship physically ends. They lie awake at night asking, did they ever actually love me?
Oh, man. That is a gut punch of a question.
It really is.
Because in the beginning, it doesn't just feel like love. It feels like the greatest, most intense love story ever written, It feels like destiny. So how can that be an illusion?
To understand the illusion, we have to look at the biological and psychological ingredients required for authentic love. You and I, or anyone with a healthy neural framework, experience love through the conduit of empathy.
Right.
Empathy is the ability to genuinely conceptualize and care about the internal emotional state of another separate human being. Narcissists, particularly those high on the spectrum moving into malignant narcissism or sociopathy, they fundamentally lack this wiring.
So they literally can't feel it.
Exactly. They have a deficit in effective empathy.
But wait, I want to push back on that for a second, because people who have been in these relationships will say, but I saw them cry. They cried when their dog died, or they cried when we watched a sad movie. Doesn't that prove they have empathy?
That is a brilliant point, and it's where so many people get confused. What you're witnessing in those moments is often not empathy, it is self-pity. Or emotional resonance that relates strictly back to themselves.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they might cry at a movie because they're imagining themselves in that sad scenario, not because they're feeling the pain of the character. When it comes to loving another person, because they lack true empathy, they cannot love who you are.
Right.
They're in a state of arrested emotional development. Other people do not exist to them as fully realized three-dimensional beings with their own rights and feelings. Other people exist merely as appliances.
Appliances, like a refrigerator or a toaster.
Exactly. So when a narcissist looks at you and says, I love you, we translate that through our empathetic worldview to mean, I cherish your soul.
Because that's what normal people mean.
Right. But what the narcissist is actually communicating is, I love what you do for me. I love the way you make me feel about myself.
Yeah.
It is highly conditional and entirely transactional. You're providing what clinical psychology calls narcissistic supply. You are a mirror holding up a reflection of their perfect, grandiose ego.
So early in the relationship, during that intense love bombing phase where they are texting you nonstop, telling you your soulmates, mirroring all your interests, they aren't actually falling in love with you, the flawed human. They are casting you in a script.
Yes, the fantasy projection. They live in a delusional fantasy world where they're flawless. But to maintain that delusion, they need supporting actors.
Wow.
They project an idealized image onto you. You are cast as the perfect soulmate, the flawless rescuer, the infinitely loyal caretaker.
It sounds exactly like being cast as an extra in a movie, but the movie is entirely directed by the narcissist. You don't get a script. You have no idea what your lines are supposed to be.
You're just flying blind.
Yeah. You're just pushed onto the set, and the second you step out of your lighting arc, the second you act like a normal human being who gets tired or gets sick or has a bad day, the director screams cut and absolutely ruins you.
And they don't just see your deviation from the script as a normal relationship hurdle. If you get the flu and can't cater to their emotional needs for 3 days, they don't think, oh, my partner is sick, I should take care of them.
Right, they don't have that empathy.
They view your sickness as an offensive, forgivable betrayal. You have cracked the mirror. You have stopped reflecting their perfection, and that triggers a deep subconscious shame within them, which they instantly convert into rage directed at you.
And this is where the mechanics of the abuse get really insidious, because it's not always just screaming and yelling. The research from Jill Wise dives deep into the hidden economics of this abuse. Financial manipulation. Money is used as this incredibly powerful, invisible leash to enforce the script.
Financial abuse is one of the most effective ways to establish covert control, because society generally views money as a private matter. We don't talk about our bank accounts.
Yeah, it's taboo.
So the abuse happens entirely in the shadows. But the way it manifests depends heavily on the type of narcissist you are dealing with.
Right, let's break that down, because the sources highlight a massive difference between overt and covert narcissists when it comes to money. With an overt narcissist, the grandiose type, it's all about flaunting superiority, isn't it?
Absolutely. To an overt narcissist, material wealth is the ultimate validator of their false self. Early on, they use money to trap you. They'll be wildly, uncomfortably generous. They'll insist on paying for everything, take you on lavish trips, buy you a car.
And if you're the target, especially if you haven't experienced that kind of wealth before, you're thinking, wow, this person is so successful and so incredibly generous. I am so taken care of.
Which is exactly what they want you to think. But it is a trap. It is a down payment on your future compliance. Because once you're hooked, once you've moved in or gotten married or quit your job to support their career, that exact same wealth is weaponized to shame and degrade you.
That is terrifying.
They will take total control of the finances. They will force you, a grown adult, to essentially grovel for basic living expenses. They will interrogate you over a $20 grocery receipt, making you feel like a thief in your own home.
God.
Meanwhile, they are spending fortunes on themselves, new golf clubs, designer clothes. But if you need a winter coat, they force you to buy it secondhand.
There was a detail in Jill Wise's material that honestly made my stomach turn.
Yeah.
It was about the timing of these financial expenditures. It's not just about withholding money. It's about using money to totally warp the victim's reality. They will frequently buy a lavish gift or book a surprise vacation immediately after subjecting the victim to a horrific, multi-hour abusive rage.
What's fascinating here is the psychological warfare of that specific tactic. We need to talk about cognitive dissonance. Imagine you have just endured a 4-hour screaming match where you were called every vile name in the book.
I can't even imagine.
You're cornered in your bedroom, your nervous system is absolutely shredded, you're crying, and you're finally thinking, I have to leave. This is a monster. I am in danger. And the next morning, that same person walks in with a diamond necklace or hands you tickets to Paris and speaks to you in the softest, most loving voice imaginable.
How does a human brain even process that?
It struggles to. It creates immense cognitive dissonance, which is the mental discomfort of holding two conflicting beliefs at once. This person is a monster who wants to destroy me versus this person is a generous provider who loves me.
Right, they can't both be true.
To resolve the discomfort, the brain, which is exhausted from the trauma, often takes the path of least resistance. The victim rationalizes. He bought me a necklace, so he must really love me. The rage was just because he was stressed at work. Maybe I did provoke him.
Wow. Just completely blaming themselves.
The narcissist intentionally uses the financial gift to buy your silence and to completely destabilize your grasp on reality. They literally believe that providing financial support buys them a permanent, unquestionable hall pass for emotional abuse.
It's like they're saying, I paid the invoice for the right to scream at you.
Exactly.
But then, on the flip side of the coin, you have covert narcissists. And they operate totally differently. They aren't the flashy billionaires picking up the tab for the whole restaurant.
No, the covert narcissist script is different. Their grandiosity is hidden behind a mask of chronic victimhood. They play the role of the poor, pitiful, misunderstood genius, or the perpetually unlucky martyr. They are absolute masters at weaponizing guilt, pity, and your own empathy against you.
So how does the financial abuse work there? Because they aren't showering you with diamonds.
No, they are extracting resources from you. You will suddenly find yourself paying their mortgage, paying off their credit card debt, funding their third attempt at a master's degree, or entirely supporting them while they, quote-unquote, look for a job for 3 years.
Jeez.
And here is the darkest magic of the covert narcissist. They will mentally spin the situation so heavily that you actually feel like they are doing you a favor by allowing you to help them.
That is mind-bending.
It is. They will make you feel like your financial contribution is the absolute bare minimum required to compensate for all your other supposed flaws. And if we move into the malignant narcissist territory, nothing is off limits. They will forge your signature on loan documents, secretly destroy your credit, steal investments, or drain your children's college funds.
That's literal theft.
Because in their mind, they are entirely entitled to take whatever they want. They don't view it as stealing. They view it as collecting what is rightfully theirs.
Yeah.
So if we pull back and look at the victim in this scenario, you are financially trapped, either by someone controlling the purse strings or by someone draining your accounts. You are being relentlessly punished for not perfectly executing a script you were never given. And you are trapped in this chaotic cycle of horrifying, unpredictable rages followed by intense, confusing affection. What does that environment do to a person's brain over months or years or decades?
It creates a trauma bond. This is perhaps the most misunderstood concept in the realm of toxic relationships. The intentional manufacturing of these extreme highs and catastrophic lows operates exactly like a slot machine. It's intermittent reinforcement.
Like gambling.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you pull the lever and get screamed at. Sometimes you pull the lever and get a romantic weekend. This unpredictability completely destabilizes the victim's nervous system. You become chemically addicted to the dump of dopamine and oxytocin that occurs during the makeup phase.
So the victim isn't addicted to the pain. They are addicted to the relief from the pain.
Precisely. And this is where the deepest tragedy locks in. The victim's baseline for normal becomes completely skewed. They begin to confuse intensity with intimacy. They start defining love by its chaos.
Right, like we fight so passionately because our love is so deep.
Exactly. But trauma bonding is not love. It is a biological survival mechanism holding you hostage.
Which brings us to a massive heartbreaking piece of this puzzle. Because once the victim realizes that stepping out of line brings this horrific punishment, they have to adapt to survive the environment. And this adaptation forces them into hiding. It fundamentally alters their psychology.
It really does.
Jill Wise talks extensively about this concept of chronic self-abandonment. She calls it one of the most devastating, long-lasting legacies of narcissistic abuse. It's not just what the abuser did to you, it's what you had to learn to do to yourself in order to survive them.
That is the absolute core of complex PTSD and these interpersonal dynamics. Self-abandonment usually starts when a person realizes that vulnerability is dangerous. If you express a genuine fear and it is used as ammunition against you the next day.
Oh, that's the worst.
Or if you express joy about a promotion and you're immediately belittled and told you aren't that smart, you learn very quickly that being authentic brings pain.
So you just stop being authentic.
You have to. To survive the daily emotional landmines, the victim learns to proactively silence their own needs. They bury their feelings. They erase their personality. They adopt a subconscious, foundational rule for living. If I disappear, I'll be safe.
If I disappear, I'll be safe.
Wow. That is chilling.
And the awful truth is, in the short term, while living inside that toxic household, it actually works. Shrinking yourself keeps the screaming at bay. It minimizes the target on your back. But long term, over years, it creates a fractured reality. The victim begins to live a double life.
Explain that. What does that double life look like day to day? There is the outer self, which is entirely dedicated to performing safety. This is the version of you that is always smiling, always caretaking, hyper-vigilant to everyone else's micro-expressions. You walk into a room and instantly scan the abuser's jawline, their breathing rate, the tone of their sigh, just to gauge the threat level.
Like a radar.
Exactly. You become a chameleon, blending into the wallpaper, agreeing with whatever opinion the abuser has that day.
And the inner self.
The inner self, your authentic desires, your true opinions, your actual personality, is shoved into a dark box and buried so deep that eventually the victim forgets where they put it. They literally forget who they actually are. They wander through their own life feeling hollow, like a ghost haunting their own body.
And that profound internal fracturing doesn't just stay hitting in the mind. It manifests in very specific, highly observable physical behaviors. When you look at the signs that someone has been mentally abused, it is heartbreaking how every day these behaviors can look if you don't know the root cause. You might just think someone is a bit quirky or anxious. I want to spend some time dissecting a few of the most prominent signs Jill Wise identifies, because they paint such a vivid picture of the survival state. The first one that really struck me was constant apologizing.
Yes. That's a huge one.
And I don't mean apologizing when you spill coffee on someone. I mean a victim saying sorry just for existing, saying sorry to a chair they bumped into, saying sorry when someone else steps on their foot.
It's a preemptive strike against imagined conflict. In the abusive relationship, every single thing that went wrong was blamed on the victim. The narcissist loses their keys. It's the victim's fault for distracting them.
Wow.
The narcissist gets a speeding ticket. It's the victim's fault for making them late. The victim is conditioned to assume they are inherently a burden, a walking mistake. So they apologize constantly to appease the environment before the rage can even begin. They are apologizing for taking up space in the world.
Another sign that is incredibly physical is an exaggerated startle reflex.
This is one of the clearest indicators of an overworked nervous system.
Right, and we aren't talking about jumping when a car backfires. We're talking about gasping, dropping things, or physically recoiling if someone just walks into the kitchen normally and says, hey, or gently taps them on the shoulder.
The body is trapped in a chronic state of fight or flight. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, is stuck in the on position. They're treating a gentle, everyday interaction like a predator strike because their past environment taught them that surprise always equals danger.
That makes so much sense.
In the narcissist's home, footsteps approaching from behind didn't mean a hug. It meant an interrogation or a sudden explosive rage. The nervous system remembers that, even years after leaving.
There's another sign on the list. What about decision paralysis? Because I know people who just cannot make a choice, whether it's where to eat dinner or what movie to watch, and they get visibly panicked if you force them to choose.
To a healthy person, picking a restaurant is low stakes. If the food is bad, it's just a mildly disappointing Tuesday night. But to a survivor of narcissistic abuse, every choice they made in the past was cataloged, mocked, criticized, or used as ammunition against them. If they picked a restaurant and the service was slow, The narcissist would berate them for ruining the entire evening, calling them stupid or useless. Making a decision meant putting a target on their own back and taking full responsibility for the narcissist's mood. So the paralysis isn't about being indecisive, it is sheer terror. They are terrified to choose because choosing brings humiliation and ridicule.
Let's talk about the need for constant validation, the need for reassurance over the tiniest things. Does this shirt look okay? Are you sure you aren't mad at me? Did I chop these onions right?
That is the direct, tragic result of long-term gaslighting. Gaslighting is a methodical dismantling of a person's reality. When an abuser tells you every single day that your memories are wrong, that your feelings are crazy, that you didn't hear what you clearly heard,
It just chips away at you.
yeah, eventually the victim's brain stops trusting itself. You lose your internal compass. You lose the ability to trust your own senses. So you have to outsource your reality testing to other people. You are constantly asking for validation because you genuinely do not trust your own eyes and ears anymore.
That's horrifying. Breaking down over minor disagreements is on the list too, right?
Ugh.
And fear of authority, being terrified of anyone in power showing even slight frustration.
Yes, because in their world, any frustration from authority equated to absolute disaster. The punishment never fit the crime.
And when you pair all that with what Jill Wise calls overthinking, it is just so sad. Acting genuinely shocked, getting teary-eyed, and repeating thank you a dozen times when someone does something mildly kind, like holding a door or bringing them a cup of coffee.
It breaks my heart every time I see it in a clinical setting. They've been starved of basic human decency for so long. They've been told they are worthless, demanding, and unlovable. So when a healthy person displays a simple, baseline act of kindness, it feels to the survivor like an impossible miracle.
Wow.
They overthink because they truly feel unworthy of the gesture, and they're stunned that kindness can exist without a hidden transactional motive.
Hello, as the creator of this channel, I'm taking a quick moment to remind you that if this content resonates, my book, What Type of Man, goes deeper into the issues covered. You can find the link in the description along with details on our non-profit mission at Life Change Plans.
Other signs include being quick to anger or frustration, defensiveness, always anticipating an attack, and having a negative or pessimistic outlook. People might call them a Debbie Downer, but they really just see no escape. So if we look at this whole constellation of behaviors, the constant apologizing, the startle reflex, the decision paralysis, the need for validation, the anticipation of attack, is it possible that victims start to mistake these trauma responses for their actual personality? Like they've been wearing this heavy defensive survival costume for so long that they actually think it's their real skin.
That is exactly what happens, and it is the ultimate tragedy of chronic self-abandonment. The victim looks in the mirror and thinks, I'm just a weak, indecisive, jumpy, overly anxious person. That's who I am.
But it's not.
No, that is not who you are. You are a person whose nervous system made a brilliant, mathematically perfect, life-saving calculation. Your brain prioritized short-term physical and emotional survival over long-term identity. These aren't character flaws. They are the heavy lead armor you had to forge and wear to survive an active war zone.
Man.
The problem is, you've escaped the war zone, but you are walking around the grocery store still wearing 100 pounds of lead armor.
And walking around in that armor is exhausting. You shrink yourself, you abandon your identity to fit this impossible script, you walk on eggshells, you apologize for breathing. But the brutal reality of the narcissistic dynamic is that eventually, even total self-destruction isn't enough. The dynamic always reaches a breaking point.
It inevitably does.
And this brings us to one of the most agonizing, disorienting phases of narcissistic abuse, which is the discard.
Yes. The discard is where the illusion violently shatters.
The narcissist just abruptly, often literally overnight, ends the relationship. It is cold, it is callous, and they almost never give the victim any valid explanation or closure.
Giving closure requires two things: empathy for the other person's pain and accountability for your own actions. The narcissist is completely allergic to both.
Right, they can't handle it.
They cannot sit down and have a mature conversation about why the relationship isn't working, because that requires treating you as an equal. The discard is so agonizing for the victim because it leaves them ruminating, obsessively replaying the last 5 years, desperately trying to solve a puzzle that is intentionally missing half its pieces.
Well, let's provide some of those missing pieces right now. Why do they do it? Why does someone who claimed you were their soulmate yesterday throw you in the trash today? Based on Jill Wise's work and the broader psychological consensus, there are concrete reasons a narcissist throws a target away. And the most important thing for a listener to hear is that none of these reasons have to do with the victim's inherent worth.
Not a single one.
The most common, obvious reason is new supply. They found someone else.
Yes. They secured a new target. But we have to be very careful how we frame this, because the victim's immediate thought is the new person must be prettier, smarter, richer, or better than me.
Naturally.
Hear this clearly. The new person is not better than you. They are simply a shinier, newer, uncracked mirror. The narcissist has drained you. They know you're exhausted. They see this new person who doesn't know their history as an untapped, overflowing well of naive adoration.
So it's just repeating the cycle.
Exactly. Make no mistake, the exact same cycle of idealization, devaluation, and discard awaits that new person. The narcissist hasn't found their true love. They've just changed the batteries in their flashlight.
Another major reason for the discard is that the victim starts enforcing boundaries.
There is absolutely nothing a high-spectrum narcissist hates more than a boundary.
Why is that? Why is a simple boundary like, please don't speak to me like that, or I need an hour to myself after work, so deeply triggering to them?
Because a boundary is a psychological wall. A boundary fundamentally says, here's where I begin and here's where you end. To a healthy person, a boundary is a request for mutual respect.
Right.
To a narcissist who views you purely as an extension of themselves, an appendage meant to serve them, a boundary is an offensive, hostile act of rebellion. Imagine if your own arm suddenly declared it had boundaries and refused to pick up a glass of water.
I mean, I'd be freaking out.
Exactly. You wouldn't respect its boundary. You would be terrified and furious that you had lost control of your arm. That is how the narcissist feels. If you hold the line on a boundary, they will initially rage and manipulate to crush it. If you refuse to fold, they will discard you because a non-compliant appliance is useless to them.
That makes total sense. Along that same lines, another reason for a sudden discard is figuring them out. If the victim starts seeing behind the mask, and especially if they start refusing to accept the narcissist's rewritten history, if you actually call out the abuse, or if you just mention the word narcissism.
Exposure is the narcissist's greatest terror. Remember, they are the heroes, the faultless victims, or the noble martyrs in their own minds. They are never, ever the villain. If you hold up a mirror of strict accountability and say what you did last night was abusive, you threaten the foundational delusion that keeps their fragile ego from collapsing.
They literally can't process that.
They cannot exist in a reality where they are at fault. So instead of reflecting on their behavior, they simply delete you from the script. And the discard in this scenario will be extraordinarily swift, usually followed immediately by a vicious smear campaign to discredit you before you can tell anyone what you saw behind the curtain.
Another reason is slowing supply. Like if you have other life obligations and can't provide 24/7 adorations, or not catering to their ego and demanding equality, or having immunity to gaslighting, where their manipulation just stops working on you. It's all about maintaining the illusion. But here's where the psychology gets really fascinating and, frankly, completely contradictory. There are two other major reasons for the discard that seem to oppose each other. First, they will discard you out of boredom.
Yes. Narcissists have incredibly short attention spans and shockingly shallow internal emotional lives. They cannot sustain deep, meaningful connection because there is no depth there.
Wow.
Once the initial thrill of the lovebombing phase wears off and the relationship settles into the normal, quiet routine of daily life, they feel an unbearable emptiness. They interpret that internal emptiness as boredom with you, so they discard you the way a child carelessly tosses aside a toy they've played with for too long.
But then, at the exact same time, they will discard you for becoming quote-unquote too needy, which is insane. They systematically destroy your self-esteem, they isolate you from your friends, they make you financially and emotionally desperate for their validation, and then they throw you away because you are acting desperate and needy.
It really is wild.
It's a completely rigged carnival game. You get discarded for being strong and setting boundaries, but you also get discarded for having your boundaries crushed and becoming needy. Every single path is designed to make you lose. Oh, and the 10th reason is a preemptive strike, so they don't look like a loser.
Yeah, it is a rigged game, and realizing that is the key to letting go of the guilt. If we connect this contradictory behavior to the bigger picture, it perfectly explains the fundamental nature of the pathology.
All right, lay it out for us.
Let's go back to the appliance analogy.
Right.
You are a toaster. If the toaster demands equality and sets boundaries, it's broken, so you throw it out. If the toaster gets drained of its power, breaks down, and gets needy, It's useless, so you throw it out.
Yeah.
If you think the toaster's going to unplug itself and leave, you throw it out first to prove you didn't want toast anyway. That's the preemptive strike discard, driven by their intense fear of abandonment. The rules of the game constantly shift, but the goal is always the same: maintaining total control and avoiding the unbearable shame of rejection.
Which is exactly why Jill Wise emphasizes so powerfully that being discarded, even though it feels in the moment like you are literally dying of a broken heart, is actually a massive blessing. It is the universe handing you an escape hatch.
It is often the only true escape, because if they still view you as a useful, compliant appliance, they will never let you go.
Yeah.
The cycle of abuse will just spin forever. The pain of the discard is incredibly intense, there's no denying that, but it is the pain of a rotting, infected wound finally being lanced and cleaned out so that it can actually heal. It is the pain of liberation.
But, and this is a massive, terrifying bad. You would logically assume that discard is the end of the story. The narcissist rode off into the sunset with their new shiny supply. You are left alone to heal. The chapter is closed.
If only.
However, because the narcissist's fragile ego requires absolute, undisputed, total victory, leaving them or being discarded by them often triggers what might be the most dangerous, prolonged phase of all. And this brings us to the terrifying reality of post-separation abuse.
This is the phase that absolutely shocks victims. And tragically, it is the phase that our society and our legal systems are woefully unequipped to handle. When you physically separate, whether you left them or they discarded you, the expectation is that they will move on.
Right, like normal breakups.
But if you move on, or heaven forbid, you actually start rebuilding your life and thriving without them, the malignant narcissist suffers what is known clinically as a massive narcissistic injury.
An injury to their ego.
Catastrophic blow to their ego. For high-spectrum narcissists, those leaning into sociopathy or malignant narcissism, life is a zero-sum game. There is no win-win. If you are happy, it means they lost, and they cannot tolerate losing.
Wow.
So if they can no longer extract positive supply from you, if you are no longer giving them love, adoration, or compliance, they will pivot seamlessly without missing a beat to extracting negative supply.
What is negative supply?
Negative supply is your fear, your frustration, your anger, your tears, your financial ruin, your despair. Provoking those reactions in you gives them the exact same feeling of omnipotent power and control as making you fall in love with them did. Destroying you feels just as good to them as possessing you.
And the tactics they use to extract that negative supply are horrific. It doesn't just stay behind closed doors anymore. The research lays out exactly what this looks like in the real world, and it usually starts with vicious smear campaigns. They don't just talk a little badly about you to a mutual friend. They invent complete, elaborate fabrications to actively destroy your reputation in your community, your church, your workplace. They will tell people you are crazy, that you are the abuser, that you stole from them.
And this is highly strategic. They are preemptively isolating you. They want to ensure that when you finally do try to speak up about the abuse, nobody will believe you because the narcissist has already poisoned the well.
Yeah.
They want to ensure you have no support system.
From there, it escalates to stalking and severe harassment, showing up at your workplace, hacking your emails, blackmail using compromising information or intimate photos that you shared when you trusted them,
That's awful.
making false criminal allegations, literally trying to set you up to be arrested just to see you suffer. But the ultimate weapon, and the one that Jill Wise herself battled for 15 grueling years, is legal abuse and parental alienation, weaponizing the family court system itself.
This is arguably the most sophisticated and devastating form of domestic violence that exists today. They use the judge, the lawyers, the depositions, and the court motions as instruments of extended torture.
How exactly do they do that? How does a judge not see it?
Because the court system is designed to handle disputes between two relatively reasonable parties acting in good faith to find a resolution. The narcissist is not acting in good faith. They do not want a resolution. The conflict is the goal.
Wow.
They will file endless, frivolous motions over a $10 discrepancy. They will drag out custody battles for years, constantly requesting new evaluations, firing their lawyers to delay hearings, refusing to sign basic agreements. They will bleed the victim financially dry, forcing them to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on legal fees just to maintain baseline custody of their kids.
And all the while, behind the scenes, they are actively brainwashing those children.
Parental alienation.
Yes. They will tell the children that the targeted parent doesn't love them, that the targeted parent abandoned the family, or that the targeted parent is dangerous. They use their own children as pawns, as weapons, to inflict the deepest, most permanent possible wound on the victim. They will sacrifice the psychological well-being of their own child just to win against their ex.
It's true evil.
It is completely chilling that the court system, a civic institution designed specifically to deliver justice and protect the vulnerable, is actively hijacked by the abuser to continue the domestic violence long after the relationship physically ends. It's like they figured out how to get the government to hold the victim down for them while they continue to beat them emotionally.
That is an incredibly accurate way to describe it.
Oh.
The system becomes the abuser's proxy. And it is exactly why, if you are entering this post-separation phase, you have to drastically shift your mindset.
Right.
You cannot rely on the hope that they will calm down or do the right thing for the kids.
Right.
You have to shift from a mindset of emotional recovery to a mindset of strict tactical defense. You are dealing with a highly dangerous adversary who is playing by a completely different set of rules.
Which is why the actionable survival strategies outlined by advocates like Jill Wise are so deeply tactical. It reads like a manual for surviving a siege. If you are facing post-separation abuse, you need a defense plan. And the very first pillar of that plan is meticulously document everything. Get a bound journal. Date, time, what happened, who witnessed it. Put out text messages, save voicemails. Even if you think a specific incident is too small to matter, write it down. You are building a pattern.
A pattern is absolutely everything in the eyes of the law, because individual incidents of post-separation abuse often look petty or harmless to an outside observer, like a judge or a police officer. An officer might say, oh, he sent you 12 texts today, just block his number.
Yeah, they just brush it off.
Or,
yeah,
she showed up at your kid's soccer game and glared at you. It's a public park. She's allowed to be there. But when you have a meticulously documented, time-stamped log of 500 of those quote-unquote minor incidents over 6 months, suddenly it paints the undeniable, terrifying picture of systematic stalking and harassment.
The next strategy: obtain restraining orders if you have the evidence, and immediately install high-quality security cameras everywhere around your home, your dash cam, everywhere.
Because you cannot rely on the abuser's conscience to keep you safe. Their conscience does not exist. You must rely on physical barriers and legal boundaries that carry immediate, real-world consequences, like arrest.
If you share children, you have to mandate safe pickups and drop-offs. You cannot do it in your driveway. Jill Wise mentioned having to do custody exchanges in the lobby of the local police station just to ensure she wasn't physically attacked or verbally abused in front of her son. You also have to force all communication through court-monitored parenting apps. Things like Our Family Wizard or Talking Parents. Absolutely no texting, no calling, no WhatsApp.
Those apps are brilliant tools for survivors because the records cannot be altered or deleted, and they are inherently court admissible. It completely strips the narcissist of their ability to gaslight. They can't scream at you over the phone and then deny it later.
That's so smart.
And because narcissists are obsessed with managing their public image, the moment they know a judge might read their messages, it naturally forces them to drastically reduce their communication and moderate their tone.
You also need to proactively inform the children's schools, pediatricians, and daycare centers. You give them the strict court orders. You tell the principal exactly what you are dealing with, so the abuser can't just show up unannounced with a charming smile and pull the kids out of class to gain leverage. And finally, if the physical threat is high enough, you have to take extreme measures. Hire private security or take self-defense classes.
Jill actually had to do that.
Yeah. She had to hire armed security to escort her into the courthouse because her ex-husband's enablers were trying to physically assault her.
It sounds extreme to someone who hasn't lived it. People might think, armed security for a divorce hearing. But when you are dealing with a malignant narcissist suffering a profound ego injury, your physical safety is genuinely at risk. They feel existentially threatened by your independence, and violence is often their last resort for control. You have to remove the emotional lens, stop thinking of them as your ex-partner, and treat the situation like a security operation.
So after taking in all of this heavy, complex information, what does this all mean for the person listening to this right now? If you are sitting in your car or walking your dog and you realize you are in the thick of this, if you are currently living the exhausting double life, constantly apologizing for taking up space, or if you are reeling from the sheer shock of a discard, trying to figure out why you weren't enough, or if you are in the trenches of the family court nightmare, feeling completely drained, what is the ultimate takeaway here?
Well, first and foremost, understand that the trauma bond is not love. the chaos, the fear, the desperate need to appease them. That is not a reflection of a soulmate connection. It is a chemical addiction engineered by abuse. And understand that your self-abandonment, your shrinking, your silence, that was a brilliant, necessary survival tactic that kept you alive when you were in danger. But it is reversible.
That is the most important message we can convey today. The damage is not permanent. The narcissist wants you to believe you are fundamentally broken, but you are not. Healing begins the moment you consciously shift your internal narrative. You have to recognize that the environment has changed.
Yes.
You have to move from the old survival rule, I must abandon myself to be safe, to the new empowering reality. I can be safe and completely authentic at the exact same time. It takes time, it takes therapy, and it takes immense grace for yourself. But the neural pathways can heal. And I want to add one more thing to that. Don't ever let the narcissist's profound inability to love you make you think that your love wasn't real. The love you gave, the sacrifices you made, the endless care and empathy you poured into that black hole of a person, that was real. It was beautiful. It proved your capacity for deep connection. The tragedy of the situation is simply that you are handing a priceless, intricate masterpiece to someone who only knew how to paint by numbers. They were fundamentally, structurally incapable of receiving it, understanding its value, or returning it.
Exactly. You were the source of that beautiful love. The narcissist didn't create it, they just extracted it. And the incredibly empowering thing is you still possess that source. The entire recovery journey is about taking all of that profound love, all of that empathy, and all of that protective grace, and finally turning it inward. It is about giving that love to the parts of yourself that you had to abandon in order to survive them.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the murky waters, I want to leave you with something to really mull over. A final thought that shifts the focus away from the immense damage they caused you and places it squarely onto the stark reality of what they actually are. We've established that a narcissist's entire existence is dedicated to forcing everyone around them to act in a fabricated, rigid script, just to protect their own incredibly fragile ego from collapsing.
Right.
But what happens to them when they finally run out of people willing to play the supporting roles? When the charm stops working because everyone sees through it? When the money runs out? When the targets get smart, set boundaries, and walk away? Are they ultimately left entirely alone, sitting in the dark, with the exact suffocating emptiness they spent their entire lives destroying others to avoid?
It's a profound, chilling question. And developmentally speaking, I think the answer is yes. They spend their entire lives running from a ghost of inadequacy, only to inevitably realize they are the ghost.
It brings us right back to where we started, that X-ray machine. The psychological damage they inflict on others is murky, it's incredibly hard to see, and it's a terrifying landscape for victims to navigate. But the narcissists themselves, underneath all the grandiosity, the rage, the lawsuits, and the manipulation, when you look closely enough through the lens of psychology, they are completely, cleanly, and permanently broken.
Perfectly said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden mechanics of narcissistic abuse. We hope this has provided clarity, validation, and a roadmap forward. Take care of yourselves, stay safe, and we'll catch you next time.
If you're hearing this, please know that the legal abuse and the economic loss you are facing does not define your future. I am 65 and I am proof that you can start over. For more info into my journey and the truths of post-separation abuse, my book is available now. The link is in the description. Healing requires both truth and peace, and if you need a moment to breathe after listening to this topic, I invite you to visit my sister channel, Life Change Plans, for affirmations and recovery tools. Please subscribe to help us reach more survivors, and I'll see you on the next video.